Achilles learns of Patroclus' death, and we receive a fiery vision of what this demigod who has chosen war for his destiny is capable of. Hello and welcome, or welcome back. Today we are reading the great books of Western civilization, beginning with the Iliad. This is the Robert Fagles translation, Book 18, and as always, we'll begin with a brief plot summary followed by analysis and commentary. Just as Achilles begins to fear what has happened to Patroclus, Nestor's son arrives to give him the bad news. Achilles collapses to the ground, weeping and wailing, and all others around him do the same. Thetis hears her son's cries and goes to him immediately, knowing that she can do nothing, and that the rest of his short life will be lived in grief and anguish. She reminds him that Zeus has given him all that he wanted, that he has punished the Greeks for their offense against him. He responds that it no longer matters to him now, for he was unable to save his friend. His only desire is now to kill Hector. Thetis warns him that his own death is fated to come shortly after Hector's, but Achilles does not care. Achilles makes his final decision. He accepts the eternal glory promised to him in exchange for his death. He accepts that that death may come at any time, soon, and he declares that his grudge against Agamemnon is fulfilled and over. He will return to the fighting and will not be dissuaded, so long as he gets his revenge. Seeing his resolve, Thetis does not try to stop him, but asks him to wait one day so that she can go and get him new armor from the gods. Achilles agrees. Meanwhile, Hector has almost completely succeeded in driving off Menelaus and great Ajax from Patroclus' body, and threatens to take him. Hera, however, sends a message with the goddess Iris to Achilles, telling him to go at once to try to save his friend from certain mutilation. Achilles protests that he promised not to go out just yet, and anyway, he can't fight without armor. So Iris tells him Hera's plan. He doesn't have to fight. He just has to go to the front of the trench and show himself to the Trojans, and surely that will be enough to terrify them. Achilles runs through the camp, out of the walls, into the edge of the trench. Athena crowns his head with a flaming cloud, seeming to be a flame from the ground all the way to the sky. Achilles then lets out a great cry of anguish, grief, and anger, 3 times, and Athena screams with him. The sight and the sound overwhelms the senses of all present. The Trojans and their horses panic. 12 of them die, crushed by chariots or impaled on their own spears. The Greeks take this chance to pull Patroclus' body clear of the fighting. Visibly shaken, the Trojans regroup some distance downfield. Polydamas urges that the Trojans must now retreat within the city walls and fight from atop the ramparts. Their success was only because Achilles was fighting against Agamemnon, but now that he has returned, they have no chance. Hector denounces this advice and promises that he will fight Achilles man-to-man himself. All the soldiers cheer with him, inspired, for Athena has taken away their good sense. Meanwhile, the Greeks all join Achilles in mourning for Patroclus, tending to his wounds and cleaning his body, as Achilles promises that he will not bury his friend until Hector is dead. Thetis arrives on Mount Olympus and goes straight to the house of Hephaestus, the god of fire and the smith for the gods. We learn that he was nursed by Thetis as an infant, and his life was saved by her care. Thetis explains her son's plight to the god, and begs him for a new set of armor superior to any on earth that she can bring to him. Hephaestus agrees and sets to work immediately. He starts with a shield, on which he emblazons images of 2 cities, one at war and one at peace, along with various scenes from regular agricultural life in Greece. He then makes the rest of the armor, and gives it all to Thetis, who takes it and leaves Olympus. Hephaestus puts a lot of interesting images onto the Shield of Achilles. These images express who Achilles is and the choice that he has made, but also tell us a lot about life as it was thought of by the ancient Greeks and the world that they live in. He puts the earth, the sky, and the sea onto the shield. Each of these are one of the domains of the 3 strongest gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Then on the earth he creates 2 cities, one at war and one at peace. These 2 cities represent Achilles' choices for his life. The city at war represents his choice to go to Troy and die in battle, but gain glory, and the other city represents the option that he has to return to his father's lands and to live in obscurity, as king, but still without glory. You'll notice that even in the peaceful city, there is violence and conflict. There's some kind of quarrel about someone whose relative was murdered, and it's being settled by a judge. Whereas in the city that's being besieged and at war, fighting breaks out. Besides this, Hephaestus forges a lot of different agricultural scenes onto the shield. Wheat being harvested, grapes being picked, lions going after herds of cattle, weddings and wedding feasts. This is what the soldiers in the Trojan War came from, and this is what they're going to return to. It's a whole different side of life, so far removed and different from the world that we're reading about in this epic, but Bernard Knox points out that throughout the epic, peace is never all that far away. Homer continuously compares things in the war to things that occur in just such pastoral settings as this. Hostile forces advancing against each other are like two lines of reapers in the wheat or barley field, cutting their way forward. He uses this and many other different comparisons to draw a surprisingly strong connection between war and peace. Knox also tells us that despite this epic being primarily focused on war, most of the scenes on the Shield, the vast majority of them, are peaceful. There is much, much more to life than death, war, and glory. Those things are just the smallest part. But Achilles has chosen this smaller part, forsaking all else. We see the choice of Achilles, his choice of his destiny, emblazoned on the shield. And his enemies, when he goes into battle, will see it too. It's a statement of resolve. It's a, this is what I gave up to be here to kill you today. You know, if they took the time to look at it closely. Speaking of which, Achilles makes his final choice in this chapter. Zeus did his job and staged the action. He's offering Achilles true eternal glory if he chooses to die. Thetis explains when she arrives that that is the choice before him right now, that in order to get revenge, he is choosing the brutal half of his prophecy. This is the point of no return. And, with no hesitation, Achilles answers yes. He permits the gods to let his death come whenever it pleases them. He will not return home, he will not live a long life, and he will never see his father again. He doesn't even care about Agamemnon and his offense anymore. That's old news, as long as he gets his revenge. And ironically enough, he's now going into battle, seeking to kill someone who's dressed up like him. Before he goes out to battle, though, he shows himself to the Trojans, terrifying them. And it's a scene that also adds and contextualizes a lot of the meanings and symbolism that we talked about before. Whenever, in the previous books, Hector was described as blazing or being fiery or being on fire, it's a tiny reference to this moment, where Achilles' anguish appears as a great pillar of fire that lights up the whole sky, promising death and destruction to everyone who opposes him. This is why Hector's fieriness is in fact Achillean-ness. Bernard Knox writes that up to now we would have believed that Hector is the best fighter on either the Greek side or the Trojan side, and we would be right only because we haven't seen Achilles in battle yet. Arbery points out that it is only after Achilles has assented to his fate, just before he goes out to the trench, where he is called the beloved of Zeus, or, as it says in the Fagles translation, Zeus's favorite fighter. He certainly seems to be, and it seems to almost have augmented his powers. Supposedly vulnerable without his armor, he is more terrifying than Hector ever was. He's got the shield of Athena wrapped around him, this cloud of fire lighting up the sky, and also new armor, which is described as being even brighter than fire. And of course, the will of Zeus behind him, moving him through all of the Trojans to its end, Achilles' end. Completely unstoppable. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. And if you learned something new today, please comment it below. Let me know what it was. I'd love to start a discussion. We'll see you next time.